Watkins! Sammy Watkins for the touchdown!
Good evening. You are listening to the Fumblerooski podcast by Power 88 and Fans Only Sports Network for our very first Sunday episode, which is a Thursday episode. So it's kind of like we apologize that we were only able to get our show off at this point. We try to get our episodes on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but none of us were really available. We have very busy schedules, so we apologize for that. But we are making it up for you, and we have a couple of guests. And for the episode where we are going to be previewing the AFC North, we have all AFC North fans, fans of different teams. So we have special guest Jack Hartman, Nick Noormand, and along with, of course, our co-host, my main man, Justin Tucker, Baltimore Ravens fan. So Jack Hartman is a Browns fan, and Nick Noormand is a Steelers fan. And the only fan who isn't here is a Bengals fan, which I did try to get one on. And Stephen Parker, if you're listening, maybe next time, dude, but it would have been great. So maybe at some point I'll try to, as a Patriots fan, and I'm going to remain loyal as a Patriots fan to stay loyal to my team, of course. But I mean, somebody has to represent the Bengals. So without further ado, for those of you, some of the people who don't know Jack Hartman, Nick Noormand, would you guys want to introduce yourselves?
Sure. I'm Nick. I am a Steelers fan, as Adam said. It is my second time guest starring on the show and just happy to be here. I've really been a football fan only like 5 years, so in the grand scheme of things, that's like not a lot of time, but I'll talk Steelers. I'll talk any sort of team with anybody, so feel free to hit me up. They'll have my socials on the comments. Yeah.
How's it going, everybody? My name's Jack. Like Adam said, I am a Browns fan in a time where it's awkward being a Browns fan, but hey, we live with it. And yeah, this is also my second time on. If you listened last week, I was here to talk AFC East preview. So yeah, happy to be back. Thank you, Adam, for having me. And this is going to be fun tonight.
Yeah, pleasure having you on for the second week in a row. And this time talking about the division where your team is in. You got to talk your Browns, talking about the Baker Mayfield situation. And you were mentioning off camera before we started this episode, getting that cleared up so that we wouldn't have to talk about it for an hour while we were talking about the AFC North. But another little twist on that is kind of that there's a possibility that Deshaun Watson might not even play again.
Strong possibility.
So that is, oh yeah. So without further ado, how about we get started? How about we all give our sort of takes on how this AFC North is going to shape up?
Sure. So I'll just open it up and say, before we started off this episode, Jack was saying that he broke down every single game that this division is playing this year and sort of how the schedules intertwine. And basically he gave a record prediction that every team at worst would be above 8-9 or 8-9. And that just speaks, in my opinion, to the depth that this division has. As we've said before, as many people have said, our division may possibly be the best division in the NFL. And really, realistically, if things shake out for any of the teams in our division, any team could win if everything breaks their way this season. Even though me and my Steelers may not be the most talented or most ready or have the best quarterback in the division, if things broke our way, we got a shot in it. If the Bengals can repeat with the explosive offense they got, they can do it. If Deshaun Watson isn't suspended and comes in and balls out like we know he can, they can win it. If the Ravens don't have 30 torn ACLs by September 1st, they can win it. But it can really break anybody's way right now.
A lot to ask for.
All of the teams really are ridiculously talented with a ton of young, talented dudes who can dominate in some of these games.
Mm-hmm. All right, Jack?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Nick, you said it really, really well, especially talking about, the way things break. Honestly, I think that the Ravens would have won the division last year if it weren't for all of the injuries that happened. And I'm saying that as a Browns fan, so like that means something. But weird stuff happens. That's sports. That's professional sports, and you fight through it, and that's what makes the cream rise to the top. For teams in the NFL is who can handle that adversity and work with it and get through it. And I think all of these teams can, and I think all of these teams will. I think the losses that teams in the AFC North are going to have this year, they're mostly going to be within the division. They all of these teams can stack up against the two divisions that they're playing in the NFC South and the AFC East. So it's going to make for a really, really fun year, a really competitive year, and a year that I don't think there's going to be a clear favorite for the division through week 15. Maybe at that point, like Nick, was sort of saying, maybe that'll be when the Steelers sort of, it becomes apparent that they're not gonna be competing for the pennant, but still, I think going into week 18, we will have no idea who is going to be coming out of the division as the champion, and that just makes for such fun, awesome football.
All right, Tuck.
Oh boy. Well, first off, I do agree with the Browns fan that if we were healthy, we had that division on lock. But unfortunately, injuries never go our way, except almost always. So we have to expect that.
I don't think injuries ever go anybody's way. Just putting that out there. I don't think.
No, I'm not saying like injuries go anybody's way. What I'm saying is the Ravens have a history of having injuries at the worst possible time, and it's not even fair. And it's unfortunate. It is what it is. We just have to fight through it. But if we stay healthy, we're getting some of our players back. We're getting our whole backfield back, which can only help our run game. Thank God. I couldn't take another minute watching Devontae Freeman and Latavius Murray run the football. God, that hurt. I'm sick and tired of looking at my old line like Lamar Jackson needs to be on life support because no one was helping him. Andre Villanueva, thank God you're retired. But enough about the injuries. When I look at the entire landscape of the AFC North, it's always going to be it's always going to be a drag-out brawl between all the rivals, because it's always like that. The Bengals always give the Ravens and the Steelers problems, just like the Steelers always give the Bengals and the Ravens problems. That's just how they built their teams to be. Because everybody knows that if you try to go through to win the Super Bowl, you're more than likely going to have to go through one of the teams in the AFC North, which is by far either the first or the second best division in football. So with that said, it's just a matter of who's going to be in the lead and who's going to take up the wild card spots. Because I think the division has the potential to have at least 3 teams to be in the playoffs, regardless of who finishes first, second, or third.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so this. I'm not going to add anything on to how competitive this division and the uncontroversial statement that injuries always happen, and it doesn't affect any other league other than the NFL. Like it's just something that you can't predict, and the NFL is just crazy. But the biggest wild card in this division is definitely the Cleveland Browns. The Browns are the team where you look at, they have arguably the highest ceiling and probably the lowest floor because of Deshaun Watson. Because if Deshaun Watson doesn't play, Baker Mayfield's not going to play either. He's already saying, screw you guys. So you wind up with some bum third string quarterback with your otherwise great roster, and you're going to end up you end up being last even to the Pittsburgh Steelers. No offense, Nick. But the team that I would have as the slam dunk favorite would be the Cincinnati Bengals. That team just top to bottom has talent everywhere you look. The secondary's improved. The offensive line has improved dramatically. And the only reason why I hesitate on picking the Bengals to win this division is the fact that they lost the Super Bowl. And I know it sounds like lazy analysis, but if you look at teams that have lost the Super Bowl, they almost never go back. And even when they go back, they almost never win it. You saw the only two teams that have won it have come back to win it have been the New England Patriots in 2018, which are a completely different animal than anybody else, that Patriots dynasty, and the Dolphins back in, what was it, the 70s? So it's just, I want to give this division to the Bengals. And you can make a case for all the other teams. This is obviously, like we've already established, most competitive division, but it's a tough one. I want to give it to so I said the Browns when we were talking about it earlier on, but because of the uncertainty with Deshaun Watson, I might have to say the Bengals, which I could wind up with egg in my face later on in the season, but I mean, that's the team I got to pick.
Listen, do they still have that burnt piece of toast at corner?
They do, but then they just get Dax Hill.
Eli Apple. Eli Apple is on the roster. He's their number one.
He's still there.
But it's better than him being your number one.
Who's their number one?
I like Dax Hill.
Nobe Awuzie?
Because I'm about to say Jackson Hill probably would have to be the corner, because God knows if they put Eli Apple out there, that's feasting, even for the Ravens.
He's a slot corner specifically, and Mike Hilton's their designated slot because Mike Hilton's like 5'7". I know, because he gets toasted by every tight end because he's 2 feet tall. But they got like 3 players that can play slot, and Eli Apple's their best outside corner.
I think Daxton Hill is versatile enough so that he can play outside, and he'll have to develop into an outside corner, or else it's not going to work.
The reason Bengals,
it's not going to work out.
The defense at Eli Apple is one of the reasons the Bengals lost the Super Bowl. But if the Bengals had a good enough offensive line, they still could have won that Super Bowl. And that's where they decided that was the more important need to improve, not only for winning, but also to protect, the center of their franchise for the foreseeable future. And so I can see it. They won that many games with Eli Apple at corner last year. They can do it again.
It's the reason they lost on that last play of the game. It was Burrow had just dropped back, and then he already had a defender who was swallowing him up, and he barely got it away. And if he had it for about a half second left,
not just a defender, the best defender in the game for a decade.
Yeah, I thought it was Aaron Donald. I figured it was Aaron Donald. I wasn't sure. I wanted to say just a defender, but either way. It's not like it's an achievement to get through that Bengals offensive line. But Jamar Chase had Ramsey beat on that play. And if he had it for a half second longer, I don't want to say he would have had him for a touchdown, but it would have been at least a first down. What was it, like 4th and 2? 4th and 1? It was 4th and 4.
That was third. That was third down. Fourth down was was when he threw it to P. Ryan and the flag fell down.
Yeah, that's the play I was talking about, where he was already swallowed up. It was the last play of the game. He barely got the ball away.
P. Ryan didn't even dive for it.
Yeah,
I was pissed. I was mad.
I will never understand why Samaje Perine did not even at least attempt to dive for that ball, because I think he may have been able to get it.
You're a Steelers fan? You're mad for the Bengals?
I don't like people playing bad football when they're in the Super Bowl and you have a shot to win a Super Bowl. You get paid for this, and this is your only shot. It's 4th down, and you're their second string running back. This isn't Joe Mixon who's worried about a contract year. This is a second string running back who becomes a legend if he makes that play.
I wanted Cincinnati to win because the Browns beat them both times in the regular season last year, and it would have been the only bright spot for us in an otherwise horrendous season. So
That's a fair point. You beat the Super Bowl champs twice in the regular season. That's fair. Wasn't that last one when they already benched their starters though?
No.
Because I'm pretty sure one of them was against the Browns where they were playing their
Hello?
Adam froze.
Adam froze.
All right, yeah, he froze on. I thought it was me for a second.
backup quarterback.
We good, boys.
Oh, he came back. No, he's not back.
We're back. All right. That was weird. I'm on spotty internet. I'm at my grandparents' house and on Cape Cod doing this episode. That's how dedicated I am to getting these episodes out, guys.
This guy.
And but yeah, I really look. I like the Bengals in this. I like the Bengals in this division. I did like the Cleveland Browns. I just think there's something about teams who have great rosters, who are a quarterback away, and get a quarterback, that star level quarterback recently. They always do something significant, whether that be the Buccaneers when they got Tom Brady, or the Rams last year when they got Matthew Stafford, and I'll argue to a lesser extent because Jimmy Garoppolo didn't play much through his first 2 years with the 49ers. His first full season was actually pretty good, and he did help that team. It was a good surrounding roster. I know it's not the best argument, which is why I say to a lesser extent, but that did work out fairly well. And Jimmy Garoppolo faces too much criticism nowadays, and I hope he finds a good situation. Even as a Patriots fan who wanted him on the Patriots for when Brady was gone and was disappointed when they traded him for a second round pick. But anything we want to add?
I was going to say, just
for this
talking
division?
about the star quarterback additions, it's not necessarily this division, but like we can talk Deshaun Watson being the star quarterback added to a team. One, we don't know how many games he's going to play. It's on the table. I think it's on the table. He doesn't play a game this year. I think that's on the board. I don't think it's likely that he doesn't play at all this year, but I think that's on the board. But the thing is, not even in the division, we also have Russell Wilson joining a team, and he's a legit Hall of Fame quarterback. And I just heard this recently that somebody brought this up, but like Matt Ryan on the Colts is going to be interesting. He's not on the same level as any of the high-profile guys that have moved recently, but he's a former MVP who has a shot if he compiles another Pro Bowl year or two to look like a Hall of Famer on his resume. And like this Colts team does have a ton of talent on it to be good this next year. So we got a lot of other teams in the AFC that have added some star power other than just the Browns adding Deshaun to become a quarterback away that could be that team that now has a superstar. So just some interesting things to think about with a lot of quarterback movement recently.
Yeah, see, that's my point, is kind of that there's a recent trend where these elite quarterbacks who move teams, they wind up with some immediate success. And I think when you look at some of the moves that have been made, the Cleveland Browns getting Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson going to Denver, even Matt Ryan going to the Colts, one of those teams is going to emerge and possibly win a Super Bowl, at least contend for one. And it's been happening it happened the last 2 years. And I mentioned Jimmy Garoppolo from the year before that. Could happen this year as well. But coming up next, we are going to talk about, so what we're going to get creative for our guest segment. Each fan in this episode is going to pitch their team and why they believe they are going to win their division. We're going to get to that next. This is the Fumblerooski podcast. You are listening to the Fumblerooski podcast by Power 80 and Fans Only Sports Network. I'm Adam Wright, Justin Tucker, Jack Hartman, Nick Noormand with you. And for our guest segment, so we have two guests in here, including including a co-host who is a fan of another AFC North team, the Ravens. So what we're going to do is we're going to go around the table, and each guy is going to pitch why they believe that their team is going to either win the division, or you might not believe they're going to win the division. You might think something else is going to happen, or get bold, say that they're going to win the Super Bowl. Whatever you believe that your team is going to do, make your pitch to us, and we're going to go around the table. We'll start with our guests. Nick, why don't you pitch your Steelers?
So my Steelers, we were talking about this a little with the pre-show, but the Steelers not maybe on the same level as the other teams in the division, where I think the three other teams in the division outside of the Steelers legitimately have MVP caliber quarterbacks, like MVP of the league level quarterbacks, where Deshaun Watson's on that level. Lamar Jackson's proven that. And Joe Burrow, I think, is on that level as well to be able to be that dude. I think we can all pretty confidently say that. But I would just say that the Steelers, I wouldn't predict them necessarily to win the division this year, but I think we can all see it in our brains if we just look at the picture. It may be a little fuzzy, but I think they got a real shot being a wild card team. I think that that's very much on the table for them being the organization that they are and being the Steelers. If you just look at the team last year compared to this year, there are some subtle moves, because I know the Steelers aren't big spenders in free agency, and I'm sure that you guys couldn't name three guys that the Steelers got in free agency. They're just not a splashy organization in free agency. But if you just look over from the changes last year to this year between the draft and free agency, our offense is really, really young and really, really athletic. If you just go through position by position, we don't have a guy on our offense that's over 27 years old. There's nobody older than something like that. Trubisky at quarterback, Pickett at quarterback, two really young athletic guys. Pickett's athleticism's underrated. It's like a slightly ratcheted down Justin Herbert kind of athleticism, where he can move, but he wants to throw the ball, but he can move well. Trubisky, really underrated athlete. He can run over dudes and is a true can run you over down the field kind of quarterback. His athleticism in the Matt Canada offense is a really interesting component. That Big Ben hasn't been athletic in 10 years, I think we can confidently say. As a Steelers fan, I remember the prime of 2017 with the Killer Bees in that offense. And that Killer Bees 2017 offense with Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown, Martavius Bryant, Juju, that was a crazy explosive offense. And Big Ben was still a statue back then. He ran for maybe 50 yards that entire season. And 50 yards is out of everybody's mind kind of thing for a quarterback in now's age of quarterback play, where 50 yards, somebody can get that in a quarter. Somebody can get that in a play now at the quarterback position. Lamar Jackson's, I'm sure, had multiple plays of over 50 yards running the ball, where having that much in an entire season is just insanity. But the athleticism at quarterback, crazy. Having Najee as your primary running back, he's a legitimate stud running back who can tote the ball 20, 25, 30 times a game if he has to. He's a true bell cow, really strong running back. And I've been seeing pictures and film out of camp. He's apparently put on about 5-10 pounds of muscle, where he looks legitimately bigger and stronger. He's apparently heavier than prime Jerome Bettis in Pittsburgh, which is insane to think about, because Jerome Bettis was big. That was a big dude. And Najee's 6'2", 6'3" taller, but he looks bigger. His legs look giant, like Saquon Barkley kind of big, which is insane to think about, because last year, seeing him as a rookie, he did not look like this. He has transformed his body and has not lost his quickness that may be a lesser part of his game, but he's still better, I would say, as good, if not better than he was last year, and he was a Pro Bowler last year. At the wide receiver position, I think we can all confidently say that Deontay Johnson is a stud receiver and one of the best route runners in the game, and a legitimate threat at wide receiver, especially in this division that may be lacking a little bit in wide receiver outside of the Bengals, who are just stacked with it. I think we can confidently say Deontay Johnson's a top 3 receiver in the division. I would say pretty comfortably with Amari Cooper and with Jamar Chase in the division. I would say that Deontay's in the conversation for that number 3 spot pretty easily. But between him and then we have Chase Claypool, who has the upside to be a number 1 receiver in the league. He's got the height and speed combination to be a really big play receiver. Even though he has an issue with focus drops and his hands are lacking, he has the ability to make those contested catches like a true down the field stud receiver, a la like a Mike Williams. And we also drafted 2 receivers that are really, really good players with a George Pickens, who's in that mold of a Chase Claypool, a really tall, big guy who's really a contested catch monster. And I know that Justin here is going to maybe be squeamish a little with the Calvin Austin pick if he's heard the stories that I have, with the Ravens wanting to draft him and the Steelers sniping him a pick before out of that war room. It's went around a lot. Peter King brought it up being in that war room that the Steelers sniped him a pick before. And he's in that same mold of like a quick returner kind of guy. He's only 5'8", but he is fast. That's everything we're hearing out of the Steelers. He is fast. He's a return specialist. He's a really good potential slot receiver with legitimate speed. And those are 2 rookies that we're adding to a room with Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool, who are kids. They're on their rookie contract. They're young. Then you've got Pat Freiermuth, who was a rookie last year and who came on in the middle of the year. Really good tight end. And our offensive line is young and improving. We don't have any of the old guys we had for years on that offensive line. It's all young, unproven, but have some of the talent, a little bit more athleticism than in the past. And the defense, you don't really even have to bring up the defense with the Steelers. We know what we're getting from them. Cam Hayward, TJ Watt, Minka Fitzpatrick. The real hole on the defense right now, I will potentially say, Stephon Tuitt retiring. We didn't have him last year, so it's not like a loss like we're playing without him compared to last year. But he's a player who made a big impact the last time he was on the field. And then besides that, our cornerback room is really, really lacking with having no Joe Hayden and our best cornerback being Akello Witherspoon. That's a little bit of a concern. He has legitimate athleticism and size and speed, but having him be your number 1 corner when he couldn't even stick in San Francisco, whose cornerback room is not good, that's a little bit troublesome as a Steelers fan. But having TJ Watt, the defensive player of the year, and legitimately, I can pretty confidently say the best defender in the division and the best defender in the AFC, I can pretty confidently say that I feel good about where the defense is. I know that Jack's shaking his head being like, Myles Garrett's right there in the division. But I would say as a more complete defender, TJ Watt being able to drop in coverage and as a run defender, maybe as a pure pass rusher, Myles Garrett fans with the pass rush win rate and with the double team rate that you'll always see Myles Garrett guys throw at you. I understand that as a pure pass rusher, but as an overall defender, his impact on the game and winning, TJ Watt single-handedly won us probably 3 or 4 football games last year that we lose without him. We just straight out lose with like a clutch force fumble late in games or with a pass breakup or a clutch sack on 3rd down. TJ Watt was a monster at impact plays last year. And I think that he can be a really big impact player post his defensive player of the year, sack record tying season. And so I think at the very least, the Steelers are going to be a really fun watch. When the last team we saw with the Steelers was a short passing game, horrendous offensive line, really unathletic quarterback, I think our offense is going to be improved. And I don't think our defense is going to be horrendous. And so I feel pretty good about being an interesting team who can make the wild card.
All right. Well, there you go. That is Nick Noormand, the Steelers fan, talking about his team and how he believes they are going to be competitive in this division. That was very well said. Didn't leave out any details at all. But Jack, why don't you sell your Browns?
Yeah. So let me just start with the huge asterisk, the biggest asterisk probably at a prediction of any NFL team ever. And that is, how many games is Deshaun Watson playing? We don't know. As of right now, he is playing every single game. And because of that, as of right now, when I did my, research and discussion and, figured my stuff out, coming into this podcast, that's how I plan. That can change, probably will change, though. I don't know. There has been talk that they might wait to penalize him until the following season because of how long and drawn out this process is going to be with the legal stuff. And I've also heard talk that the NFL wants to penalize the Browns for the way that they constructed his contract, so that if he got suspended this year, it didn't hurt them or him money wise. That the league might decide to wait, so that they can make that hurt a little more, as they should, in my own opinion. But anyway, all that to say, as of right now, Deshaun Watson is slanted to play all 17 games of the season, barring injury. So that's how we're gonna act. The Browns have one of the most talented teams in the NFL right now, and so do the Bengals, so do the Ravens. The Steelers are on their way there. We'll keep saying that. A couple other things, like that to get out of the way that don't really give an edge to anybody is we're playing against the AFC East this year. Though, we talked last week, and a lot of those teams, besides Buffalo, the Patriots, the Jets, and the Dolphins made some moves, and they're going to be a little frisky. I still think that all of these teams can beat those three teams, when that happens. Same thing with the NFC South is the NFC division that they're playing. Again, you have Tampa Bay. But other than that, you have Carolina, New Orleans, who again made some moves, might be frisky, but if they've got Jameis Winston under center, then who's to say what they can possibly do? And the Falcons, who are in total rebuild at this point. So again, not really an advantage there. Where I do think, though, that Cleveland does start to get some advantages over some of these other teams is that they've been working on this for a few years now. This is Kevin Stefanski. It's only Kevin Stefanski's third year. We saw a lot of bright spots of what the offense can be his first year. That was the year that the Browns went to the divisional round of the playoffs and lost in Arrowhead. But they, what was holding that offense back, we can all agree, was Baker Mayfield. And even when he was playing really well, he was inconsistent. So, he was what was holding that offense back, and they've addressed that. They have had and still do one of the most underrated offensive lines in the NFL as well. They worked on that, a ton to get that to where it's at. There is a little bit of turnover this year, but still not much. And those core guys they still have there. What everybody's been talking about, and it's a legitimate point, and point of question, is the wide receiver room. Amari Cooper is definitely our wide receiver one, and he's a stud and a top receiver in our game right now. But people are asking, who do they have behind that? They have Donovan Peoples-Jones, who showed some flashes when he was wide receiver 3 behind Odell Beckham Jr. and Jarvis Landry, because those two guys were getting a lot of the main the main coverage packages. Last season, that he was that guy because Odell Beckham Jr., when they released him, and Jarvis Landry was injured, he was our wide receiver 1, and he didn't perform as well. But now teams are going to be more concerned about Amari Cooper. He's going to get the chance to play a little more with a little more room. In the slot, we will probably have Anthony Schwartz, who was a rookie last year, speedy dude out of Oregon. who didn't really do much last year, but it was because it was a weird year where we had him as our slot receiver or as a guy that should be a slot receiver, but we had Jarvis Landry playing that spot. So there wasn't much room for him in the offense. He'll be able to open up a little bit. The biggest thing, though, for me, and what I think is one of the biggest under the radar moves that any team made this offseason was that the Browns locked up David Njoku. And David Njoku is a great pass catching tight end. Harrison Bryant is our route running guy, but David Njoku is big and is fast for a tight end and is athletic, and he can run routes down the field and get the ball. The Browns have the best running back tandem in the division. Don't look at me, Justin. It's true. In Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. Nick's nodding his head because he agrees with me. It's just true. And they signed Ernest Johnson for another year. Who is an athlete. We saw that in the game that both Chubb and Hunt were out, and he was our running back one against Denver. We had Case Keenum at quarterback, which meant that we were running the ball a lot. So our offense, I feel like we've made the improvements, quote unquote, but we've been making those for years, and now it's just all right. Here we go. We finally have a stud at quarterback that can sort of bring us the rest of the way over the hump. On the defensive side of the ball, I think the Browns have a really underrated secondary. John Johnson III is very, very smart. He's a great safety, but he's smart. When he was on the Rams, he was the guy that was calling the plays. It wasn't the typical Mike linebacker doing that. He was doing that from the defensive backfield. He's just got a great IQ. We've got Denzel Ward at corner, who is a stud. Might be, the best corner in the division, though I can definitely see the argument for Marlon Humphrey at that. All right. I'm just saying I can see that argument for Marlon Humphrey, but there's questions there. Their first draft pick came in the third round, and they drafted defensive back out of Mississippi State. I'm blanking on his name right now. But he showed flashes at college. He's athletic. Again, just a bigger guy. Greg Newsome, who was our first round pick 2 drafts ago, looked great last season. Watching some of his tape, he's just all around. Yes, Martin Emerson. That's the guy. Thanks, Nick. Looking back to last season and some of his film, he's just very sound in his skill, and his technique. And we have the best. Well, the Raiders might have the best now with Chandler Jones and Max Crosby, but other than that, I think the best edge rushing duo in the NFL in Jadeveon Clowney and Myles Garrett. I was really, really happy that they brought back Jadeveon Clowney because he did stuff in the run game that the Browns were missing before last year. He doesn't. People have been knocking him because he doesn't get the sack numbers, or he hasn't been getting the sack numbers. But last season we saw that open up a little bit because he's, on the other side was Myles Garrett, so there was a lot more there. Linebacker and defensive tackle is where I'm the most concerned on the defense. Though I'm not as concerned as people might think the Browns should be at linebacker. Anthony Walker is a great linebacker. We're getting him at a steal right now for $4 million a year. The Browns have Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, who they drafted 2 drafts ago, who's a first-round talent that they got in the second round, who's good in coverage and just finding the ball and hitting the ball where it's at. So, and the biggest – not the biggest thing, but a very, very big thing is special teams. They drafted Cade York. Kicking has been a real struggle for the Browns. So especially in a division where they've got Chris Boswell for the Steelers, the greatest kicker of all time, Justin Tucker for the Ravens, and the kid for the Bengals has the most swagger I've ever seen out of a kicker ever. So that was a big improvement as well. there were a couple tough losses. Losing Rashard Higgins is tough. Losing Jarvis Landry is tough. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. I think that, the Browns have the highest ceiling and the lowest floor this season. Even with Deshaun Watson playing every game, I think that's still the case because it is a new system with a new quarterback and a new offense, and with new players around him. So we'll see what happens. I think they could go as high as 13-4, and I think they could go as low as 9-8 or 8-9. It just depends, and that's taking the does Deshaun Watson play out of it. When you put that in, then it could be 13-4 or 5-12. You just don't know. But I'm optimistic about the team for this year.
Yeah, that's a great way to sum up the Cleveland Browns. That really is, like I said earlier, that team really is a wild card. You really can't tell how they're going to do, and that's in big part because of Deshaun Watson and how that whole thing is going to shape up. But Tuck, why don't you make your pitch on your Baltimore Ravens?
All right, so the way I'm going to start it is I've heard our guests speak and say that again.
Keep it PG.
It will be. I'll try my best. I will try my best for you, Adam.
Thanks, buddy.
I will do this by going off of what our guests have said and then making my case. I think that's the best way I think I can interpret it. As far as the Steelers, they're an up-and-coming team with no real, show it. I'm not going to lie. I wanted George Pickens. I wanted him. I'm pissed that you guys got him. But, hey, listen up. Marcus Peters ain't going for none of that. Marlon Humphrey ain't going for none of that either. Outside of that, you guys have Chase Claypool as your other wide receiver. I ain't scared of that. TikTok Poppy himself doesn't scare me, so let alone his little brother. That's number 2. Deontay Johnson, number 3. First off, no. He's your best wide receiver. I will admit he is a very good wide receiver, but if I put Marlon Humphrey on that, and best believe we will put Marlon Humphrey on that, he ain't got nothing for him. So unfortunately for him, that's enough of that. The quarterback position, you're trying to tell me I should trust Mitchell Trubisky and Kenny Pickett. That's what you're trying to convince me. I don't care how athletic Mitchell Trubisky is. I don't care how much potential Kenny Pickett has. You can't convince me of none of that. If you try to convince me of that, I will tell you, all right, I will try to tell you they haven't shown it on the field as of yet. So we're talking about a hypothetical sense of they might be something, but due to their prior engagements in Chicago and Kenny Pickett in Pittsburgh, I ain't convinced because no one was clamoring for Kenny Pickett during the draft. That's why he fell to Pittsburgh. Number 3, that cornerback position. That cornerback position is god awful. The only other time it was worse is when y'all had Artie Burns as your other cornerback, and we all know how that turned out. Bro. He's almost as bad as Eli Apple.
No, he's not. This is untrue.
Untrue.
Those are some strong words.
Artie Burns was a first-round bust. We do not have a first-round bust in our secondary. We have zero busts.
That's why I said it reminds me of it. I'm not saying it's comparable, but it reminds me of the time you guys had Artie Burns.
We had Ross Cockrell on that cornerback core. It was horrendous. It was so bad.
Unforgivable. It was unforgivable.
But our safety room was also bad. Our safety room couldn't save our skins either. By the way, this is a Ravens segment, and I have heard Steelers slander and nothing else.
That's all I've heard. Are you pitching why the Steelers suck, or are you pitching why your Ravens are good?
I could have my part where I go and just talk about Lamar Jackson's a running back if we want to do that. So
we'll get to you in a second, Browns fans. You think you're the only one that's about to get
Ravens. It. You're here to talk about the Ravens, not talk bad about everybody else.
I'm not talking. I explained to you why I feel this way. I said if I put Marlon Humphreys on Deontay Johnson, I feel like that will be comparable. I believe our defense as a whole just obliterates their offense because we have now Marcus Peters back. We have Marcus Williams in our secondary, which will only improve our playmaking capabilities. which will allow, more interceptions and more opportunities to have turnovers, which we severely needed, which we couldn't get because Chuck Clark couldn't catch worth a damn. But that's besides the point. He just couldn't catch. And I was so shocked when we played against the Rams and he had 2 picks, 1 for a pick 6. I was like, Chuck Clark is actually making plays because he's not like that usually.
What about your first round pick? What about your guys' first round pick this year?
Which is why I haven't even gotten
bring him up. That man's a stud.
He is a first round. Well, I don't want to say stud because I usually say that for when they actually prove something on the field. Like, I want to say he is a stud based upon what he's proven in camp, but until he's actually on the field and we can actually see it, God bless him. But I think he's a very good talent. I wouldn't say stud yet until he actually shows it on the field against quality talent. And not just, in shorts and cleats. Our offense is finally getting back healthy. We finally have a backfield. I told y'all this during the pre-show. I got sick and tired of watching Devontae Freeman and Latavius Murray run the ball. And the Ravens trying to convince me that's the way we're going to win games. No wonder we lost 5 games. I ain't going for none of that this year. I hope, and I'm seriously praying that our backfield can stay healthy this year. Because, oh my God, did you see what we were working with? We were taking scraps, and it's unfortunate that both Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins had those terrible Achilles injuries, but hopefully they're back to near 100%. If not, that's why we drafted a running back in the 6th round, Tyler Batty, who's actually not that bad, all things considered, and I think we got him at a steal in the 6th round. And I'm actually seeing this text that Nick just sent. Lamar Jackson is not the best running back in the year. He's the best quarterback, but not the best running back.
No, because Nick Chubb is the best running back in the division.
I'm not going to disagree on that. I'm not going to do it. I can't, unfortunately, because my guys are coming off injury, and Nick Chubb is a stud. I will give you that.
Is J.K. Dobbins the 5th best running back in the AFC North is my question. Like, legitimately. Like, I feel like that's on the table that, like, Hunt and Chubb and Najee and Mixon, like, those are studs right there who aren't injured. Just saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dobbins isn't really.
When he's healthy, yet. I think he's top 3. When he's healthy, you guys got to remember, he didn't start the entire year, and then he finished with 800 yards. He didn't start the year. So, and like, if he's healthy, I believe he could easily be over 1,000 yards and then go from there. But he finished the year with like 9 touchdowns. So I let the results speak for themselves. If he's healthy, our wide receiver core is noticeably depleted with the loss of Marquise Brown. But again, I believe that will make up for the ascension with Rashad Bateman. I believe he's finally healthy and is able to take steps to where he can be the true number 1 in the offense.
Depth there, though.
Who's your number 2 wide receiver, by the way?
I believe that would be
James Mark Prochet. Andrews is their number 1 wide receiver.
This is true, but
I believe it would be James Prochet, if I'm not, or Devin Duvernay.
Who? Exactly.
Who?
I'm not saying our wide receiver core is the best. I'm not saying that. But again, our team has never been built around our wide receiver core.
It's a run-first offense.
We're a run-first offense.
If anything, it was a massive underutilization for Marquise Brown being on that team.
No, because even when we gave him the ball, he actually did have over 1,000 yards this last season. So it's not like we underutilized him. He actually was effective in our offense.
Yeah, but for that season, if he was on a pass-heavy team, he would have been so much more.
I don't know. And we're making assumptions that we can't figure out until this year because he'll have more opportunities with DeAndre Hopkins getting out for 6 games. So we'll see. My only problem with Marquise has always been, for some unknown reason, and you saw it against the Steelers, he'll have a drop that'll make me punch a wall. We had a touchdown. He dropped it, and I almost punched a hole in the wall because he always does
conversion. It was the 2-point conversion play at the end of the game when Lamar Jackson got pressured by TJ Watt and Mark Andrews.
Mark Andrews dropped it. I'm talking about Marquise. Marquise dropped that against the Steelers.
But that's not just the Steelers. He drops things against everybody. There was the Broncos game that he had 3 drops for touchdowns.
It was Detroit.
The Monday Night Football
Detroit,
game.
You're right.
The Monday Night Football game 2 seasons ago between the Browns and the Ravens, where Lamar Jackson had to go take a dump and come back out.
Yep.
I wasn't concerned about how wide open Marquise Brown was on the touchdown play until he had finally caught the ball.
And it's crazy because when we get into the playoffs, he catches everything, which is my only gripe with him. For some reason, when we get into the playoffs, he's like, all right, let me make it sure it actually counts. Like it didn't count all the other times in the regular season. But in the postseason, he gets his act together. So I'll miss that about him when we're healthy. As far as I'm concerned, our line is better than last year. Andre Villanueva is not.
Let's go, bro.
I will not, because I remember when he first came to training camp and he had this great speech, and then he played against the Raiders, and Max Crosby took his lunch. I will never forgive him for that. Oh my God, he got killed with this outside spin. I will never forgive him for that. He just couldn't block him. I'm like, we're sending doubles to him, and he still can stop Max Crosby. I mean, again, it's Max Crosby, so of course he's going to be good, but he should not be getting abused this much. So I'm happy Ronnie Stanley is coming back. Hopefully he can stay healthy off that ankle. I'm not sure. We're going to have to wait and see on that. We have a future All-Pro at center and Tyler Lindenbaum. Everybody keeps telling me he's going to be a future All-Pro, but again, it's not like Creed Humphrey or Corey Linsley or Scrubs, so we'll see how well he can do. But in our offense, I believe he'll at least produce at a Pro Bowl level. Kevin Zeitler was always good for us this season. For the first year he's been there, he was our best lineman by far. So I'm happy he's staying, and Lamar Jackson's coming back healthy. Jack said something early about us losing 5 games. Coincidentally, it also happened due to Lamar missing 5 games. Crazy how that happens.
That 8-3 lead in the AFC last year. They were the number 1 seed at 8-3 last year.
And then Lamar goes down against the Browns, and then it just crumbles from there. When I tell you Lamar Jackson is our offense because Greg Roman can't do anything else without him, I'm being serious.
The Dolphins game, the Ravens-Dolphins game, when he was just throwing screen passes that wouldn't go like more than 2 yards down the field against Byron Murphy and Xavier Howard, it was bad. It was not good.
I was so pissed off because I'm like, first off, I think one of the first couple of drives, in my heart, I thought it was a touchdown, but Sammy Watkins gave up on it. I don't know why. I'm not sure if he thought he couldn't catch it or he thought he was just going to be out of bounds. I don't know what it was, but he gave up on it. I was like, that might have just cost it. He just cost us points. And then coincidentally, Justin Tucker missed a field goal. So that didn't make me feel any better about it. And then that game was just a giant pile of zero blitz that we couldn't stop because our line couldn't pick it up. Javon Holland kept coming through all the damn time. But anyway, that was last year. I believe this year is better because our defensive line is actually better. We actually have a couple picks named Travis Jones. That's actually a lot better than what we were dealing with. He's younger, and hopefully he can give Calais Campbell more breaks than he needs to because he's up there in age now. Brandon Williams, it was time for him to go, so I'm happy we were able to snag Travis Jones in the 3rd round. I don't think he'll necessarily play until the later half of this year, but if David Ojabo is who we believe he is, he might be a problem for years to come. And then we have Odafe Owe, who's our other bookend pass rusher, who is a stud, but again, he fell off a little last year because of a shoulder injury, so we'll see what he can become in year 2. And I was liking the production that our linebackers were getting, mainly because of Patrick Queen. So there's that. And then we got to talk about everybody else. The Browns. Deshaun Watson may or may not play. I don't even need to go into them. And Anthony Schwartz, you're trying to convince me of him. The only thing he's opening the door for is Deshaun Watson when he actually gets suspended. That's the only thing he's doing. That Browns defense is unbelievable. I will give you that. I wanted Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah when he fell to the second round.
Y'all jumped the Steelers in that draft to get him. I was mad. I wanted him bad.
We were texting during that draft, and I was we're gonna get him.
You said we're only trading up for him and nobody else. That's what you said. We are trading up for him.
That same draft night, the 1st round, I told Adam I would be happy if we got him because I wanted him to be right next to Patrick Queen. And I was like, damn, we didn't get him. I was happy with what we got in the end, but I was like, we could have had Joker, but we don't have him. We could have had JOK.
He's so good. He's so good.
He's so talented too. And then you have the back end, which I think an underrated duo in Greg Newsome and Denzel Ward is actually very good. The only problem is Denzel Ward is not better than Marlon Humphrey. I don't understand why there should be an argument. There's no argument. There's no.
He plays outside corner. That's more valuable. I think Marlon Humphrey
Marlon
is
can
the
play
best
inside
slot corner
and
in the
out.
game. I think he can do anything, but I think he's the best slot corner in the game and not the best outside corner. I think he's a good outside corner. I think Denzel Ward's a top 5 outside corner in the league, and that's really valuable. Just my take.
I believe Marlon Humphrey's a top 5 corner outside. It just depends on what you're asking him to do.
Opinions.
It's opinions, but the fact of the matter is I do think that Brown secondary is very good, along with
John Johnson.
Not John Johnson, the one that plays next to him from LSU.
Greedy Williams.
Greedy Williams. No,
Greedy
Grant Delpit. That's the one I'm thinking about. Everybody keeps forgetting about him, but when he's healthy, he can be very good. The problem is he's not healthy, so it's kind of hard to maintain. Like, all right, what can this guy be? But I think I believe sooner or later, I believe he'll show you why he was highly touted coming out of LSU. My only problem is the quarterback position. I don't understand why. Like, people say that Baker was horrendous for the Browns, and I get some of the things were his fault, but I don't blame everything on him. And one of the reasons why I don't blame everything on him was the game plan against the Steelers.
The James Hudson game. It was bad.
You're telling me
TJ Watt ate his lunch money for breakfast.
You're telling me the game plan was to consistently leave a rookie right tackle one-on-one with TJ Watt and thinking Baker throwing for over 50 times and not giving the ball, but only to a majority of the time, Nick Chubb, because he was on a count restraint for some reason, because they didn't want him to get injured. And you're trying to tell me they were trying to win that game?
That game for me was that Dolphins Ravens game for you. I just sat there and from the get-go was just frustrated and angry all 60 minutes of gameplay. Like, yeah.
I felt bad for a Browns fan because I'm like, Baker's not this bad, even with the arm restraint. It's just he's injured, and they're trying to make him do something that he's not comfortable doing at this moment in time, and throwing it for over 50 yards against a Steelers secondary that was better than what it is currently now, and against a right tackle who will get his lunch taken from him from TJ Watt. And he had 4 sacks that game?
I think 5. 4 or 5.
Yeah,
but that's how he broke the record. It wasn't in that game, but that's what jump started him. And also, that was a game, though, that Myles Garrett had no sacks against our rookie left tackle, which was insane to me as well, because he didn't get a ton of help that game. But that Browns game was just tough because our run defense, the Steelers' run defense, was the worst in the game last year. It was horrible. And the Browns had the best running, or one of the best running games in the league consistently the last couple of years. And you guys were ripping off huge runs a bunch on us, but for some reason wanted to throw it a ton early and late in that game, which I did not understand. But it was just a massive nightmare late in the season.
Yeah, but this is just me yammering on about the faults of the
Adam,
Browns.
did you want to talk a little bit more about the Bengals? Or did you get all your Bengals fake fan stuff out after you said that you were a Patriots fan and going down hard for them?
I'm just saying somebody needs to represent the team.
No, except here's the thing. No, Justin never bashed the Bengals, right? Because they were never brought up. So if you bring them up, then they'll just get bashed, right?
So you might as well just leave them alone.
Look, all I'm saying is not enough is being said about Evan McPherson, the best kicker in all of football.
Clutch. He was clutch as hell last year. Not the best, but he was clutch in the playoffs. That man had ice water.
That guy has some balls on him too.
Bro, I just love the story that Joe Burrow said of how he just walked over and said to him, walking out to kick the field goal against the Titans, well, I guess we're going to the AFC Championship game.
Oh.
That's just, you don't do that, especially as a kicker. You just don't do that.
And if he missed that,
That would have been rough.
That would have gone, and then that gets around, then that's never. No one's gonna ever live that down,
Bro, that's the Matt Hasselbeck. We're taking the ball and scoring.
We're gonna score and throw pick sticks.
Yeah, that's how it could have turned out. It would have turned out that bad. My thing with the Bengals and like what they're gonna be this year, I think teams are finally gonna be like, hey, why don't we just double Jamar Chase? Because even Jalen Ramsey in the Super Bowl could not consistently cover him. Jamar Chase is just that good, and I would say easily a top 3 to top 5 receiver in the game right now. I think that I can pretty confidently say in that range. As a rookie, I think he's on another level than we've seen for a good number of years. And I think people just say, okay, wait, he's a deep threat with insane speed. We need a safety shading over him all the time. I think he's going to get that treatment from now on that he didn't get this year as much as he should have. I think Joe Burrow behind a better offensive line is going to be better. But I also think that they're going to pull back, like Adam said, with a little bit of the Super Bowl hangover. Teams know a little bit more about what they're defending. There's more film on their offense and what type of offense they're going to be. I think their defense isn't going to be quite as good with the defensive tackle rotation that they had going on, actually. And I think that Hendrickson, the name of their pass rusher, Trey Hendrickson, I think he's mad overrated, and he's had a couple of good years these last couple of years, but I think he's really overrated as a Pro Bowl, all-pro level pass rusher. I don't believe that's what he is. I think he's a 8 to 10 sacks a season, but not really the impact level pass rusher that people think that he is. But he's just really good at finishing when the play should be given up on, and like he did not win the rep, but chasing after the QB and having a good motor. And so I think that he's a good pass rusher, but I think that he's going to have a pullback season as well. So that's just my opinion. Their secondary, like we've talked about, lacking at corner, we would all say to a degree. I think their offensive line is going to be better, but I have no idea who's playing center for them this year. And that's a big problem on a team that has had a lackluster offensive line. I think the center position as the leader of that offensive line really matters. But what are your guys' takes as far as a little bit of Bengals talk?
To a certain degree, when it comes to cornerbacks. Oh yeah, the degrees of burnt that they have with Eli Apple. Oh yeah,
but they have Ted Karras, I believe, to play center. I think that based on reports, that's the guy that they're going to use. And look, the main thing with the Bengals is not just like, especially when you mentioned
Chase.
Jamar Chase. I blanked on the name. Even if you do manage to successfully cover him, you still have two other very, very underrated guys in that wide receiving core in Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins to figure out. And you may not have the tight end anymore, Tyler Uzomah, but tight end isn't really that big of a factor nowadays in the NFL. It's great if you have one, but it's just not that important of a position anymore.
Have you heard of Travis Kelce?
Or George Kittle? Or Darren Waller? Or Kyle Pitts?
I know. But were any of those guys in the Super Bowl this year?
No. But Travis Kelce
the Rams fared pretty well without an elite tight end. They
had a great tight end. He was just injured, as was Uzomah in the playoffs. I forget what the name is. The dude's like 6'7" though on the Rams.
Yeah, sure.
Higbee?
Higbee?
Is it Higbee? I think it is.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, it's just they're not that big of a factor in the offense.
I strongly disagree. This is something I strongly disagrry with. Actually,
you can disagree. I just think
let him talk.
The tight end position is just not as important. It's great if you have one, but if you don't have one, then you can still rely on your wide receivers and your running backs.
If the Ravens didn't have a tight end, then we definitely could say Lamar Jackson is a running back. Mark Andrews is the only reason we can't say that. And even Justin has to agree with that.
Are we going to pretend like Kansas City has the greatest wide receiver core now that Tyreek Hill is gone?
Doesn't that say a lot more about their wide receiving core rather than their tight end?
I just don't know that we can name a great team in the NFL without at least a competent tight end. I think every team has at least a pretty damn good tight end in the game right now.
Well, you can talk about competent, yeah, like
I
competence.
think the great ones.
But
Kittle
I mean,
is
like,
on a
I
great
think
team
maybe I need to clarify a little more. I mean, like elite, like best of the best, like top 3 to 5 guy.
Yeah, I think Kittle and Kelsey matching up in the Super Bowl 2 years ago, or Gronk and Kelsey the year after that. I think those are stud tight ends who make huge impact in the playoffs with clutch catches.
Yeah, but Rob Gronkowski isn't on the same level that he. I don't believe he's on the same level that he was.
700 yards this last year as an old man.
Gronkowski comes out of retirement just to leave the Patriots. Now Adam just can't stand him.
It's possible.
Salt, baby. Edelman
It's
coming
possible.
out of retirement too to join the Buccaneers.
He's a good tight end. He's a good tight end.
Best walking tight end I've ever seen.
But he's I don't know. Tight end position just doesn't feel as important to me. It's one of those positions where I feel like you can get away with having like a serviceable player at that position, whereas like a quarterback, wide receiver, if you're only serviceable at those spots, you're going to get smoked in this league. Same with corner. You can't be just serviceable at corner.
Bengals exist. What do you mean?
What?
The Bengals exist. Let me put it this way, Adam. Would you rather have the best running back in the game or the best tight end in the game? Or would you rather have a top 5 tight end or a top 5 running back?
I'd rather just be serviceable at all those spots.
Well, sure.
I'd rather just be very good at all those spots because it's more of I like the aspect of a team effort. You know, you don't often see when you have that there's a reason why the MVP curse is a thing. True. Like when you have that one guy who you center your offense around, then you're going to run into a team in the playoffs who's going to game plan for that. And then eventually they're going to succeed at least containing it. And then they're going to, that's why Julio Jones doesn't have a ring, because once you just game plan for him, then what are you going to do then? Because
don't do that.
Cooper Kupp exists.
Cooper Kupp
with all 1,900 of his yards last year in the regular season.
Right, but a big part of why they were successful is because they were able to find success in other spots. Odell Beckham Jr. being a successful trade acquisition was huge for them, and that was a big concern for the team. Nobody was during the trade deadline was thinking, oh well, they'll be fine without a number 2. They'll have Cooper Kupp. People were worried. They were like, well, if they only just lean on Cooper Kupp, then defense is just going to focus on him. That's my point.
No. They had Robert Woods, and then he tore his
ACL. He tore his ACL the same day they signed OBJ too. So it wasn't like prepping.
And there were concerns on whether or not that OBJ was going to be able to find any form of his former self at that point once Robert Woods went down. So there was a big question on whether or not Odell Beckham Jr. would pan out for him. And if Beckham didn't pan out, then they're in trouble. Mm-hmm. Because you have that one guy in Cooper Kupp, and who's not only the number 1 option as a wide receiver, but just pass catchers in general. That's a problem. I like the idea of a team effort. That's all I'm saying.
100%.
Don't bite my head off.
I get you. I got you, Adam. My thing was just when you said, I don't think that the tight end is very valuable in the current game or like very important. That's where I'm just like, all the great tight ends are on great teams because they have a big impact, in my opinion. There's not a great tight end in the league outside of Kyle Pitts, who was drafted top 4. Yeah, but Darren Waller, I mean, is a great tight end on a good team. Like, the Raiders are no slouches. They made the playoffs last year. Yeah. Like, I don't think there's a really high level.
Playoffs, but
they almost beat the Bengals. They were on track to beat the Bengals late, and had a tough stretch at the end of the game. I don't know.
That was one of those teams where they benefited from a really strong start to the season, and they were slouches towards the end of the season.
They also
they were
Ruggs,
really barely able to make it in. And
Henry Ruggs, he got too speedy for his own good. If they still had him, they would be dangerous late in the year if they had still had Henry Ruggs.
He knows how to get that speed up.
Yeah.
We know that much. Speed. This is bad.
Deshaun Jackson was not a great replacement.
Don't make that joke, Adam. Don't make that joke.
Yeah.
Speed kills 21.
Hey, I mean, you're wrong with you're right with either context that you could put it in.
I got you.
We'll say that much. But do we have any other thoughts before we end the show tonight?
Thoughts? Oh, I was just gonna ask, just like quick rankings. What order do you guys put the coaches in the division and the quarterbacks? Because like those are the races I think in the division that are actually tightest. And so just like 1 through 4, it doesn't have to be long, but just like thoughts from you guys if you have anything notable to say with it.
I'd say Harbaugh, Tomlin, Cincinnati's coach, then Cleveland's coach.
Bruh, I would not put Cincinnati's coach over Cleveland. I like Stefanski more than I do whoever the hell coaches Cleveland again. Zach Taylor, that's his name.
Yeah, I put Cincinnati's coach over Cleveland's.
Why?
Yeah, no.
Stefanski took the Browns to the playoffs and won a game against the Steelers.
Cincinnati to the Super Bowl. I can't argue against that. And they won.
Joe Burrow and Evan McPherson carried. That's my opinion. But
they wouldn't have won without the coaching, unfortunately.
I think they would have. I think they would have won with most other coaches because, like, that's just my take. Jack,
right. So I can't ignore it.
So I'm gonna say Tomlin, Stefanski, Harbaugh, Taylor. And here's the rationale.
Let me hear it.
Here's the rationale. Again, I think this season is going to be the end of it, but Mike Tomlin has never had a team since he's been with the Steelers have worse than a winning record, right? That's never happened. Or 500 when there was 16 games at 8-8, right?
Mm-hmm.
Last year, the last 3 or 4 years, he's been dealing with old, decrepit Big Ben Roethlisberger, or dummy gonna try and pull Myles Garrett's head off or helmet off, Mason Rudolph.
Duck Hodges too, baby. Duck Hodges. You know, right? So there's that. Yeah, so there's that. So that's why I've got Tomlin that high. I've got Stefanski that high because then next, for obviously not the exact same reason, but similar reason, is that he fully turned the Browns around in his first year. And last year was rough because of Mayfield being injured and other injuries, like, you know, Justin, you obviously know about, you know, because the Ravens battled the same problem. But the fact that he still got them to 8-9 is still pretty impressive to me. And especially the insane culture and locker room shift with him. The reason I've got Harbaugh and Taylor as the bottom two is because they do really get the benefits of having insane talent at the quarterback position, where Tomlin and Stefanski don't, right? So that's not saying putting that in order isn't saying that either of those guys are bad coaches, but I'm saying that Harbaugh gets off more with having Lamar Jackson than Kevin Stefanski or Mike Tomlin do with having Baker Mayfield or 40-year-old Ben Roethlisberger, right? And then Zach Taylor, I think it's the same thing. He's good. Don't get me wrong. He's a great coach. You know, obviously you have to be, if you're going to get your team to the Super Bowl, there aren't bad. Well, Doug Peterson got the Eagles to the Super Bowl, but at the time, I don't think he was a bad coach. So yeah, Andy won. But you know, you have to be at least in the top third of coaches in the NFL if you're going to get your team to the Super Bowl. So that's not saying that any of these guys are bad coaches. I'm just saying I think that surprisingly the AFC North has now for the first time probably ever found stability at the head coaching spot
at all with all four teams. You don't have the Bengals stuck in Lovie Smith purgatory, or not Lovie Smith, Marvin Lewis purgatory. Yeah. You don't have the Browns with Freddie Kitchens anymore. You've got high level IQ coaches at all four teams. So
yes, I would rock with Mike Tomlin. Never had a losing season. His motivation, like if you guys ever hear him talk, like he's that dude. And then I'd rock with John Harbaugh. Got to put respect on his name for the culture. And like, I honestly don't think the Ravens are that talented of a team the last couple of years. I think Lamar is that dude. And I think Ronnie Stanley, really good tackle. And I think their corners are really good. But honestly, I think their offense outside of like Mark Andrews and Lamar doesn't have a lot of talent the last couple of years. That's just my personal opinion. But I think that it was coached up and schemed up well enough to where they leaned into what they did well. And I've been really impressed with the Ravens coaching staff. Then I would rock with the Browns and Kevin Stefanski. Got to put respect on his name. He's turned around the Browns and been the best coach the Browns have had in 25, 30 years, probably since Belichick. I think he's probably the best coach they've had since Belichick in the early mid-90s, which is crazy to say because that was a long time ago. And then I would rock with somehow Zach Taylor at the number 4 spot being a Super Bowl runner-up. I just don't think his resume is extremely interesting, and I think that they've, for the most part, overachieved due to the talent on their team and their drafting more than they have actually coaching. And so that's just my opinion. But yeah.
Nice. Yeah. As far as quarterbacks go, coaches, it really is a toss-up for me. I can't really answer that. Maybe I'll have Tomlin number 1. Cincinnati's coach, I'm not too fond of. I thought he just took advantage of a very good team. However, quarterbacks, I will say Lamar Jackson, I have to put at least in the top 2. At least top 2. He's a proven commodity, and just to stroke Justin's ego.
No. I swear to you, if you put Joe Burrow number 1, go ahead. No, don't stroke it. No, put Joe Burrow number 1. Go ahead. I dare you.
I'm putting Joe Burrow number 1. He went to a Super Bowl. Tomfoolery. He went to a Super Bowl, and he's a true pocket passer. I love my pocket passers, and he looks like a Peyton Manning. He looks like that type of quarterback who can throw for 1 million touchdowns. He gets up there in interceptions, but he can rack up the yardage and everything. And I love me some Joe Burrow. I love his winning attitude as well. After that,
who's number 3?
Number 3 would be Deshaun Watson. Watson, as long as he plays, and hopefully he'll play at some point. The only reason I have him below everyone else is because obviously he's it's unproven on whether or not he'll play. And then after that, at number 4, we're going to put Kenny Pickett. We're going to put our guy Kenny Pickett down there.
Not even Trubisky.
Not Trubisky. He needs
either or. They're 4th.
Yeah. You can interchange. We can argue that another time, but yeah.
When it comes to the QBs, you have all tied at first: Jackson, Burrow, and Watson, and then bringing up the rear in 5th is Pickett or Trubisky. And the reason is they're all very, very different quarterbacks. I think Burrow and Jackson are both at the exact same level of eliteness. It's just they do it very, very different ways. And so maybe have them both tied at first and put Watson at 3rd, not because he might not play, because that shouldn't impact where I put him in terms of right now, currently, how good quarterbacks are. Like that, that's all based on what the past has been, not what is he going to play or not. But we haven't seen him in a while, so there's that. But yeah.
All right. Well, we are going to have to end this episode because
Wait, did Nick say
it's
his?
gone on for a while.
Did Nick
Wait.
say?
I did not say mine. I'll make it quick though. I'll make it quick. I'll make it quick. If Deshaun Watson played 17 games, I would rock with Joe Burrow, Deshaun Watson, Lamar Jackson, and then the Steelers dudes. The last time I saw Deshaun Watson, he had 0 weaknesses in his game. I thought he was that dude. And I'm not very high on Lamar Jackson. To be fair, the most film I've seen of Lamar Jackson have been against the Steelers. And I'm sure, as Tuck can tell you, his games against the Steelers are not good. And that's just a matchup nightmare problem. But like Steelers-Ravens games, Lamar Jackson has not looked good. And that's when I've seen him most. And to be honest, I think Lamar has limitations where when you take away some of his running ability, I think his pocket passing still has room to develop. And so, honestly, I love Lamar Jackson. I think he's a top 10 quarterback in the league. But I think that he just has hard limitations when it comes to late season, pocket collapsing kind of football. And that's just my opinion. So I would take Deshaun Watson right now. If he's playing half the season, I'll take Lamar Jackson, of course. But if I'm taking them raw, just like I have them full schedule, I'm taking Deshaun Watson over Lamar Jackson, and I'm pretty confident with it.
I don't know what you're saying, but okay. I will respect your opinion. I'm not even going to do this. I'm going to say 1 and 1A or Lamar Jackson first, Joe Burrow second. They're on the same caliber. It just depends on what your preference is. I'm not going to be too butthurt if for some reason, for whatever reason, somebody puts Joe Burrow.
You were butthurt.
I was.
You were ready to.
I'm not going to get pissed off about it. I don't care what anybody tells me.
You were pretty pissed
off. In the
off.
far third, it's Deshaun Watson. And then fourth, it's Mitchell or Kenny Pickett, whatever floats your boat. It is what it is.
Look, the best ability is availability. And if Deshaun Watson were to be guaranteed to be on the field, I would have him a lot higher. I might have him and Joe Burrow 1-2. But I just can't do that. I can't.
We're talking availability. Mitch Trubisky is the most available quarterback in the division.
Please.
Yeah,
that man is never injured. That is all I'm saying.
We can't go all out on availability. There's a lot of backup quarterbacks who'll be free on Sunday, but we're not going to put them up there and just be like, "Oh, you're free. Just come on out here. Come on primetime football. Face Patrick Mahomes. See how that goes."
Yes, sir.
All right, guys. Well, we do need to end the show tonight. This was a long one. We had a lot to talk about with this division, a lot of ins and outs, X's and O's, all that stuff. This is a crazy division, meaning we had a lot to go over, but that'll do it for us tonight. Thank you for listening to us. Be sure to tune into us live Tuesdays and Thursdays at 7:30 on Twitter and Facebook through Fans Only Sports Network. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We also have all our episodes available on Spotify, Spreaker, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and so much more. Also, be sure to follow our Instagram at Fumblerooski_podcast to keep up with our podcast and the latest coverage on the NFL. Otherwise, we'll see you next week. Over and out.